I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 21st school board meeting. There's anybody in the public that wish to speak. There's a sign-in sheet at the back, and you'll have your time to speak at that time. So at this time, Ms. Knight, if you would introduce our student prayer.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I have the pleasure to introduce our young man that will be presenting our prayer this morning. And I would like to introduce you to Samuel Agner, the 9-year-old son of Bo and Megan Agner. He is a bright and ambitious 4th grade homeschool student. Samuel is an active helper on the family farm where he drives the tractor and assists with the hay and cows. He also takes great pride in his own herd of pigs, which he has purchased with his own money this year. Samuel has a Mustang pony named Jasper and is preparing for his second livestock show. This year, he will proudly show a steer named Element raised by his own cow, Skunktail. Samuel's favorite subject is math, and he dreams of becoming an inventor when he grows up. When he isn't busy with his farm responsibilities and schoolwork, you'll likely find him enjoying his favorite pastime, fishing. Samuel's work ethic, kind heart, and creativity make him an inspiration to those around him. Thank you, Samuel, and your family for being here to present our prayer today.
All right, let's all stand. Go ahead, bud.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Please help them make good decisions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I have the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you take me fishing with you?
Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you, Samuel.
Okay, this meeting is now called to order. Ms. Thomas?
Great morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
You all asked me to come to go over our assessment data, so we are going to be looking at our growth from our first assessment, which we took in August, and then we're going to look at the second assessment, which was taken in December. So we're starting off here with Greenville Elementary School, and just so that as we're moving forward, everybody can be on one accord, what we want to see is more students scoring at higher levels than they scored from PM1 to PM2. And if you will look at the example that's up here, you can see the red means the students scored a level 1. So this first bar is the first test that they took, and the second bar is the second test they took. So at Greenville Elementary, starting off with the ELA, you can see 75% of the students scored a level 1 back in August, and that number was reduced, well, that percentage was reduced down to 58 students. 58% of students scored a level 1 on PM2. So we are moving in the right area as far as the students scoring a level 1, which is the lowest level. So if they move from level 1, we're hoping, rather than the students relocating, going to other places, that it actually means they went to a higher level. And that's when you move over to level 2, which is the yellow bars, and you can see during PM1, which is the first yellow bar, only 8% of the students scored a level 2, but on PM2, the test they took in December, that number increased to 25% of the students scored a level 2. So students are growing in the area of ELA. You can see for level 3, which are the green bars, and then level 4, the blue bars, we had 8% of students who scored level 3 and 8% who scored level 4 on the first PM, and that percentage stayed the same for the second PM. which means, either the same students maintain or some students may have moved up and some moved back down. If you look at the next picture at the bottom, that is the math. This is third grade math for Greenville. And you can see, like I said, the bars that are red, this is representing students who scored, the percentage of students who scored a level 1. The yellow is representing percentage of students who scored a level 2. So from PM1 to PM2, there wasn't any growth. So we still have 73% of students scoring at a level 1 who scored level 1 in August. And that number is still the same, that percentage is still the same in December. And the same with level 2. We had 27% of the students who scored a level 2 in August, and once again, 27% scored a level 2 in December for the subject of math. You can see based on the chart, none of the students were proficient at the first progress monitoring assessment in August, and we still weren't able to get any students to the proficient level in December. So there is some concern there. The school does have different measures in place. They have tutors coming in. There have been some instructional changes, as well as administration changes and support from the state to try and help students progress at a level to where they're proficient. And I should have preceded the conversation by saying this. When we're looking at PM data, I just want you guys to keep in mind that students are assessed all the standards they should know for the school year at the beginning of the school year. So it's not alarming when you see students scoring a level 1. It means they have not been taught the skills yet, the benchmarks yet. However, by level 2, we do want to see growth, and we want to see some students being proficient. Ma'am?
Let me ask you a question. I understand the PM1. Now, PM2, does that mean all the standards are on that test also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So they get every standard that they have to take each time they take the progress monitoring assessment. So by the middle of the year, you can hope that at least 50%, sometimes more depending on the subject area, of course, and the pacing guide, that they've learned 50% or if not more of the standards they should know for the school year.
Thank you.
So we would have, that's why I say we should hope that by PM2 there should be significant growth and students moving into proficiency. Okay, so now we'll go to fourth grade. And you can see here on fourth grade, this the first picture at the top is of the ELA for Greenville Elementary fourth grade students. 100% of them scored level 1 in August, and once again in December, 100% of them scored level 1 for the area of ELA. So obviously this is a concern. The fourth grade is one of their smaller grades. They only have 8 students right now in that grade level. So one student not doing well, or in this case, if none of the students do well, it's a huge impact because of the small number of students that are there. And like I said earlier, the school is aware of their data. They're working tediously, trying to offset the deficits that students are having in ELA. And then you can move down to the next slide for fourth grade, and you can see something similar in math, although there were a few students who moved from a level 1. They started off with 100% level 1 in math for fourth grade, but a few of them, 11% of those students have moved to a level 2. So we'll go on to fifth grade. 71% of the students started off scoring a level 1 for fifth grade in ELA at Greenville. And that number, that percentage was reduced to 64% of the students. And you can see that most of those students, well, 7%, all of those students went from a level 1 to a level 2. Once again, we're looking for growth, trying to see that they're moving from a lower level to a higher level. So the percentage of students scoring a level 2 went from 21% to 29%. There were a few students proficient. 7% of them were proficient at the beginning of the school year, and they maintained that proficiency in December for fifth grade ELA. If you look at the bottom slide, this is the math, and hopefully by now you can see the trend, and this is one of the trends across the district. We kind of dealt with this at the end of the school year. Math seems to be an area of deficit district-wide, and fifth grade math, they started off 100% of the students scoring a level 1, and that number has maintained into December when they took the test again. So once again, they're using the same precautionary methods, trying to make sure students are growing. Their tutoring is broke out into specific groups. So rather than like seeing the data overall like you all are seeing it, they drill down to the exact students, and they are alternating those students out to work with tutors in their areas of weaknesses, but they are also targeting specific benchmarks to help these numbers change. Sixth grade ELA at Greenville, they started off 62% of those students scored a level 1. That went from 62 to 54% of those students scoring a level 1 in December. And you can see here, the number of students scoring a level 2 went from 23% to 38%. So, you know, they are growing, and that's what we want them to do. The students who scored proficient, which is going to be your level 3, 4, or 5, was maintained, except for you can see there was a little drop from PM1 to PM2 for level 3 students. They started off 8% of them proficient, and then it moved down to 7%, which for Greenville, based on the student numbers, that was probably one student whose score dropped, or I know they had some students move away. One student could have moved. When you go down to the math, which is the second image here, you can see they started off with 92%. So most of the students scored a level 1 in August, but that number drastically decreased in sixth grade, down to 62% of the students scoring at a level 2 in December. And you can see the level 2 went from 8% of students being proficient to 38%, not proficient, I'm sorry, going to a level 2, and then it went from 8% to 38%. So 30% increase in students scoring a level 2, which is the area we want them to move in.
I have a
Ma'am.
question about the sixth grade, and I don't know if it's an error on the chart
Mm-hmm.
or if it's, so in PM1, you had 0 level 4s. PM2, we have 8 level 4s. PM1, you have 8 level 5s.
Wait, are you talking about the ELA or the? Okay.
Yeah, on the ELA. So from the way I'm perceiving it, it looks like the level 4s and the level 5s kind of flip-flopped. Is the chart not accurate? Do you see what I'm saying? PM1, you had 0 4s. PM2, you had 8%, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say 8, but 8%. And then PM1, it's saying you had 8% level 5s and then 0% level 5s.
Yeah, so that's right, you're right.
So they went
from-
down?
Right,
They went from level 5s to level 4s?
right.
That, okay, all right, that's what I was trying to figure out
And,
is,
oh yeah, I didn't explain that, I explained
Yeah.
the 8 and the 7%, yeah, you're right, thanks. And so, like I said, that's probably gonna be 1 or 2 students at the
Right.
most based on their population. But you're right, it does mean that.
They went down
the
from a 5 to a-
students, right,
Okay.
went from a 5 to a 4 there.
okay.
So the chart is right. And like I was saying about the sixth grade math, you can see there, students are growing in math, which is a good thing. However, we still don't have any students who are proficient. And the hopes is that the different strategies the school has put in place, that by test time again, which students will be testing in May, by then we will have students who are proficient. Any questions about Greenville before we move to the next school? Next school, we have Pinetta Elementary School. You can see 40% of the students scored a level 1 in August. And then there was, third grade ELA. And then there was a bit of an increase in the students who scored a level 1 in December for third graders, 47%. So once again, the school is aware that some of the students dropped. Here, they moved from either level 3 or 2, although some of them, obviously, based on the chart, they probably were proficient and moved down to a 2. So they are working diligently in that area of third grade ELA. You can see they started off 40% of the students scored a level 2 in August, and then in December, it was down to 20%. Some of those students increased and they became proficient, which is what we want them to do. The proficiency for level 3 went from a 7% to 26%. But like I say, some of those students also declined because our percentage of level 1 students increased just a little bit there by 7%. So some of them became proficient and some of them dropped a little. And you can see there, some of them not only became proficient, but someone, at least a couple of students probably, scored a level 5 on the second assessment. So there's definitely some growth there in third grade ELA. If you look down at the math, you can see 67% of the students scored a level 1 at the beginning of the school year. By December, that number was significantly decreased down to 13% of the students. You can see most of them went from a level 1 to a level 2. There's huge gains there. Only 26% of them scored a level 2, but 60% scored a level 2 in December. And then there were also some students who became proficient, and once again, that's the goal, right? So 7% to 20% of the students in third grade math are proficient now. And you can see that on the second assessment in December, some students actually scored a level 4. So third grade math is looking very promising. And once again, students are tested on all the benchmarks for the entire school year. So it shows us that 27% of the students right now are ready.
Ms. Thomas, I do have a question. This is kind of, when these percentages are calculated, do they account for, just say, percentage is part of a whole? If you have students leave or come to that school, are those percentages calculated based on the population at the time of the testing? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
So you don't do you really get an accurate depiction of it based on a percentage of a whole number if that number is ever changing based on, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So yes, so these numbers, you're not going to get an accurate depiction because it is based on the students who were at the school
Right.
at the time and who took the test, and that's what the state does.
Okay.
What we do at the school level is after we have our PM1 and our PM2, and then we have our FTE in February, the next one being February, when we have that window, all of the administrators are asked to go through and find your students.
Okay.
When we say find your students, we mean students who are going to count for your school grade. So that means they would have need to be there during the window in October
Right.
and February. So right now, this is just kind of a synopsis of where the whole school is,
Okay.
but not necessarily the ones who count
And
for us.
I was gonna say that because you could really, if you get into the weeds of it, say you have such a small population of students, especially some of our outlying schools, if you have just a couple kids
That's
leave
right.
and move and go to Central, this could be very misleading in the sense
Right.
of you
Security
think.
or not.
Right.
Right.
And so I just want to ensure that the data is presented at the school level to say, we need, like you said, focus on these particular kids, like this kid dropped or this kid made gains. And I appreciate this. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we realize that this could,
I understand it.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
do understand.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And like I say, the administrators, they go through their students
Okay.
and they don't look at it just like you guys are seeing
Right,
here.
right.
They look at each and every student.
Okay.
And they match their students.
Okay.
And those students, of course, they want to teach everyone,
Mm-hmm.
they want everyone to grow. But those students they know will directly, make up their school grade.
Right.
So that's something that they do, but that won't
Okay.
take place until like the middle of February.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent question, though. All right, so for fourth grade ELA at Pinetta Elementary, they started off 35% of the students scored a level 1. Um, and that number decreased down to 12% of the students scoring a level 1. Most of the students went to, if you look over at PM4, PM2, level 4, most of those students jumped over level 3 and went to a level 4. So we are definitely seeing a lot of growth in ELA for Pinetta Elementary School. That's a great thing. We want more students to not only be proficient, but we would like for all of our scholars to score as high as they can. So I was very impressed by this fourth grade ELA. You can see the gains are significant here. And we did have, also an increase in the students scoring in level 5 as well. Look down at the bottom, you will see the fourth grade math. They started off, most of the students, 88% of them came in scoring a level 1 in math, but that drastically was reduced down to 35% of the students scoring a level 1 in math. And most of them, you can see they went from a level 1 to a level 2. 35% of the students scored a level 2 on their second assessment in December. But you can also see 18%, which is great, scored a level 3. And then 12% scoring a level 4. So you can see in fourth grade, both in the areas of ELA and math, students are making awesome gains. And so we are confident that they're going to, continue in that area. Fifth grade math, 44% of the students scored a level 1 back in August, and that number was reduced down to 31%. The level 2 was at 38% in August, and it went up to 50%. So a lot of the students scored a level 2, but if you look on over to level 4 and even level 5, you can see some of those students scored a level 4 and a 5, which once again is great. Level 3 was maintained. Either some students stayed the same or they moved up and another student moved from a level 1 or 2 to a level 3. But you can see there that they had 12% of the students scoring at a level 4 and then 6% scoring at a level 5 in fifth grade ELA. If you'll look at the math, like I pointed out earlier, last year, at the end of the school year, we noticed for our elementary schools, math was a district-wide concern. And so that's why the numbers coming in aren't that alarming. And like I said earlier, they have not been taught the standards. So the kids that score well on that first test in August simply just no more coming into the school year. They started off with 88%, and that was reduced down to 69% of the students scoring a level 1. And you can see that they went from a level 6% scoring a level 2 to 25%. So that's where most of the students went. But you can also see there it says PM1 level 3. It was at 6% on the first assessment in August, but we lost those students. We lost them, but we gained because they actually, when this data is looked at, those students went to a level 4. So it might look like we didn't have any students score level 3, but those students actually went to a level 4 on the second assessment. So once again, math, they are making some growth. ELA for sixth grade at Pinetta, they started off with 42% of the students scoring level 1. That went down to just 25% of the students. Most of those students went from a level 1 to a level 2. 50% of their students scored level 2 in December. And then you can see as far as the proficiency, the level 3, the level 4, the level 5, those remain the same. They had 17% of students scoring proficient at a level 3, and then they had 8% scoring proficient at level 4 for both the first assessment and the second assessment. Down to sixth grade math, They started off 83% of the students scored a level 1, and then that number went down to 67% of the students. Once again, most of them went from a level 1 to a level 2. 25% of the students scored a level 2 in December, but they also had 8% of the students become proficient in December. Any questions on that? All right, so Lee Elementary, PM1, they started off for third grade ELA, 49% of the students scored a level 1, and that went down to 30% of the students scored a level 1. You can see it wasn't that they just went from a 1 to a 2. Most of those students became proficient at either level 3 or level 4. They're from PM1 to PM2, they went from 11% to 26%, so you know, that was awesome as far as proficiency, and then they went from 7% to 11% of the students scored a level 4 proficiency. Fourth grade math, they started off with 81% of the students scored a level 1. That was reduced significantly down to just 56% of the students. And some of those students went from a level 1 to a level 2. They moved that percentage from 15% of them scoring level 2 to 27%, but many of them went on to become proficient. The proficiency went from 4% at a level 3 to 15%, and then they actually had 4% of the students move past a level 3 and they scored proficiency at a level 4. So that's the kind of growth we want to see. Fourth grade ELA, they started off PM1, 41% of the students scored a level 1, but then by PM2 that was reduced to 35% of the students. You can see the level 2 percentage stayed the same, 35% for both PM1 and PM2. But you can also see at PM1 for level 3, they started off with 18% and that went down to 6%. It wasn't that we lost students, students actually increased the level at which they scored. So you can see from PM1, only 6% scored at a level 4, but that drastically increased to 18% of the students, and then they even had some students, 6% score at a level 5. So fourth grade ELA is looking very good, and students are scoring not just proficiency, but higher levels of proficiency. Math for fourth grade, they started off with 82% of students scoring at a level 1. That went down to 59%. Most of those students improved from a level 1 to a level 2 by their test in December. It went from 12% to 29% of them scoring level 2. And you can see there they did not have any proficiency for the first test, but by the second test they had proficiency at levels 3 and 4. Oh, I'm sorry, no, they did have proficiency level 4. 6% scored a level 4, and that was maintained. Fifth grade ELA, 33% of students scored a level 1, and that went down to 29% of students scored a level 1. You can see here 46% of the students scored a level 2, and that also went down to 38% scored a level 2. And that's because most of the students moved into proficiency. So they either scored a level 3, that went up a few percentage points, 4% points there, or they scored a level 4 or 5, or no, just 4. So most of them went from a level 2 all the way to a level 4. So you can see 17% of the students scored a level 4. It looks like they did have probably 1 or 2 students at the most who scored decline from PM1 to PM2 as far as the level 5 student. You can see there 4% scored level 5 for the first progress monitoring assessment, but did not maintain that for the second. Or like I said, the student could have moved. So there are a number of reasons that could decline. Fifth grade math, 74% of students scored in level 1, and that went down to 61% of students scoring a level 1. You can see that most of the students moved from a level 1 to a level 2. That increased from 17% to 22% of the students scored a level 2. But there were also some students who scored a level 3 and who scored a level 4. So 13% scored a level 3, and then 4% of the students actually scored a level 4 on their second assessment. We look here at 6th grade ELA, and you can see that students actually started out really good for 6th grade ELA for the beginning of the school year. It was just 7% of the students who scored level 1, and that number maintained 7%. Excuse me. 43% of the students scored a level 2, that decreased to 36%, and you can see that those students went on to become proficient. So the level 3's percentage of students scoring at level 3 maintained the same, but you can see many students went on to become level 4. 29%, so they more than doubled the percentage of students who scored a level 4 from the first test to the second test. But then also, even though there was a decline there, you can still see some students still scored a level 5 on their second assessment for 6th grade ELA. So for math at Lee Elementary, they started off 54% of the students scoring a level 1, and you can see that number was cut by more than half. Of those students went from a level 1 to a level 2 or 3. So by the second assessment, 46% of the students scored a level 2, 23% scored level 3, and even 8% scored a level 4. So students are making great gains in the area of math, especially for 6th grade. Any questions for the elementary? Okay, so we're moving on to Madison County Central School. 77% of the students scored a level 1 at the beginning of the school year in August. By December, that number went down for 3rd grade students to 63% of them scoring a level 1. You can see most of them improved from a level 1 and went to a level 2. 30% of them scored a level 2 on their second assessment. But there were also a few students who scored a level 4. So 2% of the students scored a level 4. There was a little bit of decline here from PM1 to PM2 as far as the percentage of students scoring a level 3. It went from 6% to 5%. Central is a larger school, so that's probably more than 1 or 2 students, like it would be at the outlying schools. If we look at 3rd grade math, you can see they started off with 80% of the students scoring a level 1. That number decreased down to 67% of the students scored a level 1. And you can see that most of them moved from a level 1 to a level 2. 17% of them scored a level 1 in August, and in December, level 2 in August. In December, 25% of them scored a level 2. And then you can also see the level 3 students, the number of them also increased. It went from 3% being proficient to 8% being proficient. 4th grade, I don't know why I have my slides reversed here, but we'll start off with the 4th grade math here. 4th grade math at Central School, 90% of the students came in and scored a level 1 in August. That number went down to just having 71% of them scoring a level 1. Most of those students, you can see, went from a level 1 to a level 2. The percentage of students scoring a level 2 went from 7% to 23%. But there were also a couple of students who scored a level, well, like I say, it could be more than a couple at Central. 2% of students scored at level 4 and 2% of students scored at level 5 at Central School on the second assessment. And that could also explain, you can see there from PM1, you can see there from PM1 There was a level 4 there. There was 2% of the students scoring a level 4. Those could have been the same students. I didn't look into individual students' names, but those could be the same students who moved to a level 5. Looking at the 4th grade ELA, you can see 64% of the students scored a level 1. PM2 was down to 62%, so the growth there is not exactly what they would want, but some students are definitely showing growth. The percentage of students who scored a level 2 also declined. Well, that also declined because those students are now becoming proficient. You can see the proficiency for level 3 went from 6% to 9%. For level 4, it went from 3% to 6%. And for level 5, it went from 2% to 3%. So there is definitely some growth there. 5th grade ELA, 56% of the students scored a level 1 at the beginning of the school year in December. 59% of those students scored a level 1. So this is kind of the opposite of what we've been seeing for most of the grade levels across the district. But once again, you know, the schools are aware of the data and they do look at it not as just a whole, but they also look at individual students to find out the students who need help and further assistance. 26% scored a level 2 in August and 25% scored a level 2 in December. You can also see the level of proficiency also went down in 5th grade ELA. Of course, that admin is aware of this, and once again, they are putting in strategies in place, especially using intervention time to try to target some of these areas of deficits for students, to try to get the scores back up. 5th grade math, 88% of the students scored a level 1, and that number went down to 76% of students. Most of those students went from a level 1 to a level 2. You can see the percentage of students scoring a level 2 more than double. You can also see 2% of the students who scored a level 1, a level 3 on the first progress monitoring assessment were more than likely the same students who scored a level 4 on the second progress monitoring assessment. So more than likely that 2% of students just grew. 6th grade ELA, they started off 47% of the students scored a level 1, and that number went down to 45% of the students. Most of the students went from a level 1 to a level 2. 27% of them started off the school year with a level 2, but by December, 35% of those students were scoring level 2. So you can also see 16% of them started off the school year being proficient at a level 3. Some of those students moved to a level 5 or either 4, and then the 4s increased to 5. You can see, however, there was a little bit of decline from the number of students who scored a level 3 at the beginning of the school year. A couple of them did go down to a level 2. And once again, that is something that the school's aware of, and they are addressing that for 6th grade ELA. 6th grade math, 75% of the students scored a level 1, and that number decreased, went down to 60% of the students scored a level 1. Most of them went from a level 1 to a level 2. But there are some students who increased and went from a level 2 or even a 1 to become proficient. 5% of the students were proficient, and that's a little bit more than they had at the beginning of the school year. And then at least 1% of the students scored a level 5 on the second assessment for 6th grade math. Our 7th grade ELA at Central School, 42% scored a level 1, and then 39% of those students maintain a level 1. The rest of those students, you can see either went to a level 3, 4, or 5. So more than likely, they didn't really go to a level 2, because you can see your level, percentage of students scored at level 2 actually went down, and that's because more students became proficient, which is what we want. 12% of them were proficient in December at level 3, 11% were proficient at level 4, and then 4% were proficient at a level 5. And that's what we want to see. Seventh grade math, they started out with 49% of them scoring level 1. That went down to 40% of the students scored in level 1. Several of them went to a level 2. That increased by 4 percentage points. But then some of the students also became proficient at a level 4, which was great. That went from 2% to 8% of students scoring at a level 4 on the test they took in December. And they were able to maintain the students scoring at a level 5. You can see there that there was a little drop by percentage in students who scored at a level 1, but that's more than likely because they went from, level 3. That's more than likely because they went from a 3 to a level 4. 8th grade, ELA. They started off 49% of the students scored a level 1. That went down to 40%. Very few students went from a 1 to a 2. More of the students became proficient. Yes. So they went from 11% to 18% of them becoming proficient. You do see a little bit of decline there from the percentage of students who scored a level 4 from the first test to the second test, but some of those students actually went to a level 5. And some of them, went to a level 3, but there was a percentage of them that went to a level 5 for 8th grade ELA. And then the 8th grade math, you can see the area of math here looks absolutely amazing from the beginning of the school year to December. They started off 85% of them scored at level 1, but by the second assessment, that number was reduced significantly. 43% of them only scored at a level 1. Most of them went from a 1 to a 2, but you can also see 8% of the students scored proficient at a level 3 for 8th grade math. Any questions for Central School? Madison County High School, last school and only 2 grade levels to go. So at the high school, you all know they do not do progress monitoring as far as the state is concerned for the area of math. We do our own district internal progress monitoring for algebra and geometry, but the state is continuing to do the ELA for them. So we only have 2 grade levels, 9th and 10th grade. They started off 57% of the students scored a level 1. That went down to 55% of the students scoring a level 1. You can see those students didn't go to a level 2. The ones who increased from a level 1, they became proficient. So they either went to a 3, a 4, or a 5. So we are seeing some growth there in the area of ELA for 9th grade students. And then 10th grade, they started off 64% of the students scored a level 1. That went down to 57% of the students. You can see here, once again, kind of the same trend where it wasn't necessarily the level 1s went to a level 2, but they actually became proficient. And that's why you see your number of level 2, your percentage of level 2 students lower. Some of them may have gone from a 1 to a 2, but either enough of the 2s went to a level 3, 4, or 5, becoming proficient, or some of the 1s may have even become proficient. You can see that 12% of the students were proficient at a level 3, 10% were proficient at level 4, and they even had 3% at a level 5. And that is it for the high school. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I've got a comment to make. First of all, I'm glad for the success that we see, a lot of progress and some challenges, but is there any type of screening prior to kindergarten? I know, okay,
All pre-K had to take the START.
Okay, pre-K, that means if they attended pre-K in the,
They're supposed to do it
all
even
pre-K,
at the
okay.
private.
So you're going to catch any learning disability at that point?
I wouldn't
Not-
say you catch a learning
You learn.
disability, but they do test the students to see they, take the school readiness test.
Okay, so, all right, I was just wondering.
Sometimes disabilities don't come until later.
Right, yeah, that's right. Mhm.
And the state goes ahead and pre-K want us to go ahead and start providing interventions to those students
Okay.
as well, once we see that they're at that struggling deficiency.
Well, good, thank you,
And they all take the same test.
yeah. Thank you.
We haven't always had that. So that's good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. All right, we're going to go to our agenda. Any amendments to the agenda?
The only thing, you were given a handout that goes under the personnel and under the internship, and I'll discuss that when we get there.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I second.
I have a motion by Ms. Thompson and a second by Ms. Knight to adopt the agenda. All approve? All opposed? 5-0, Ms. Diamond. All right, public comment. Any public comment? No public comment. All right, good deal. We'll go to our consent items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I move that we approve the consent items.
have a motion.
Second.
To approve the consent items by Ms. Hagan, a second by Ms. Gibson. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All approve? All opposed? 4-0. 5-0, I'm sorry. Went to school at Greenville. The 5 wasn't in there sometimes. Okay, items for individual consideration. Our 5.1 audit for internal accounts.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We had to do a little bit of reshuffling this one, didn't we? Because we made it. As in years past, I've got a summary handout that I'm gonna go through instead of all the individual portfolio schools. I do have, extra sets. Y'all received a full set of the actual audit report, you know, electronically, but I did bring a couple extras. Who would like,
You can give them to,
just for your files? So,
thank you.
and then, let me just quickly pass out this summary.
Thank
A little thicker, so don't let that.
Thank you.
fool you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just looking at page one, we'll walk through this, and some of this I'm gonna go through much faster. So again, don't let the thickness of this fool you, there's some examples in the back. But basically, we conducted our audit for the period ending, the year ending 6/30/24, and they were conducted in accordance with government auditing standards, which is a standard higher than regular auditing standards that we have to follow. We issued unmodified opinions, which means basically it's a clean opinion. So that doesn't mean the report's clean, because we did have some findings, but the opinion is clean. So we issued unmodified as opposed to an adverse opinion or a disclaimer. And I want to point out that we encountered no significant difficulties or disagreements in dealing with, you know, management and as we performed the audit. I do want to mention, though, we did not receive access to the reports and the software until around September 4th, which triggers kind of a snowballing effect. We kind of get backlogged in, and then hurricanes came along, as we all know, and threw us off as well. So I think we were down 4 to 5 weeks without internet. We're 100% internet-based in our office. So I was hoping to present this at our December meeting. I think we missed it by one day. The report's dated December 11th. But we did have some recorded audit adjustments this year. Normally, we do not have audit adjustments. We did the prior year too, and it all relates to the same thing. Normally, we have findings of internal control weaknesses, and so forth. But the recorded audit adjustments stem to the problems that we had from the year before with the CDs. We have some new members on the board, so I'll kind of go through the history just a little bit. I guess it must have been 3 years ago, the board made a decision to do away with some CDs and just transfer the funds and consolidate everything into one checking account instead of having them splittered. For instance, the high school had 3 CDs plus a checking account. And there were some issues that year that was brought to y'all's attention, so y'all made that decision. So the changes were made in the fiscal year ending 6/30/23, okay? So when those CDs were basically cashed in and transferred to the checking account, they were recorded in the internal funds, well, the books for 2 of the schools, Madison County High School and Pinetta, as receipts, like new money coming in. So there's some duplication of monies on the reports. It overstated the money. So we made a correction in last year's audit. And so, but there's a little bit of a, I won't say a little bit of a software issue really, where it's normally when you make audit adjustments, you can make them in that period that you're auditing. Well, the way the software works, it doesn't work that way. So they actually had to make the adjustments, our audit adjustments from the prior year in this fiscal year ending June 30, 24. So one problem triggered kind of 2 years worth of adjustments, if that makes sense. So as we're reviewing the unaudited statements from each of these 2 schools, their balances were overstated, so we have to go correct the beginning balances, which our audit reports are correct, okay? And, but the way they recorded that is through, to be able to reduce that beginning balance, they actually had recorded as a disbursement, which was not true, but that was the only way to kind of work it in the software. And so if you look on page 1 under recorded audit adjustments, there were adjustments made at the high school in the athletics fund, which is one of I don't know, probably about 80 or so different funds at the high school. And the total beginning cash balances were off by $56,000. It involved the athletics department and also the software, not athletics department, it's athletics fund. It's kind of a catch-all. They also have a baseball fund, basketball fund, and others too. But so the beginning cash balances were overstated by $56,000, which was made up from the athletics fund and the softball fund. So we made those adjustments, and that's what that is about. And then the other set of adjustments with Pinetta, there was a CD that was transferred to the checking account. And again, in order to book that, they booked it as receipts. It's like overstating income, which they really didn't need to do anything other than cash the CD and transfer the funds. Does that, if that makes sense? So, okay. All right. If no questions there, we'll go to page 2, the summary of our findings. Last year, in the period ending 6/30/23, we had 14 findings. This year, we had 11 findings. And you can see, middle of the page, the total findings, like Madison County High School had 4, Central School 2, and so forth. And we classified these as significant deficiencies as opposed to a material weakness. But material weakness is a deficiency, or maybe sometimes even a combination of deficiencies in internal control, where there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the school's financial statements will not be prevented or detected or corrected on a timely basis. So in the prior year, the audit findings were considered material weakness because they weren't caught until we came in and did the audit. So this year, we did not classify the deficiencies as such because it was the only way that software could really work. So, but a significant deficiency is actually a deficiency that's a little less severe than a material, but it still notes discussing and review. So let's go to page 3. Out of all these findings, as usual, we notify the principals and the bookkeepers, and they have to make a response. And in our audit report, we record their responses. But at the high school, we had 2 significant deficiencies. The first one involved disbursements that were made without proper invoices or, receipts to show the support. There were actually, that we found, there were 2 instances where funds were dispersed to individuals where there was either no receipt or just insufficient receipt. And I've got an example. If you turn to, hold your place here on page 3, but go over to page 7 for this example. So there was in the top left-hand box to a Gene Pride, there was a check written for $125, but there was no supporting evidence of that. And then to the right of that, there was one to Jason Whitfield for $250, but there was only a $125 receipt. So we constantly have this issue year after year after year. Some years it's really heavy and some years less. But even on this one for Jason Whitfield, there's no date or anything like that. All the invoices need to be dated. They need to be, in case of an individual, I'd have it signed. That bookkeeper at each school just needs to be cautious and have good documentation. Otherwise, you can circumvent internal control, and as we know it, there can be problems. Going back to page 3, and let me say this, as far as the documentation, it's required by the state, Red Book, and it's also required by the school district's policy manual, which states that invoices or other approved substantiating evidence shall be required for all payments from school funds, including payments from petty cash and so forth. So it's a requirement, but it quite often gets overlooked. Under the high school, also, the second item, there's a significant deficiency where transfers were made, but there was no documentation. In other words, what would prevent somebody from transferring fund, or the bookkeeper from transferring funds from, let's say, athletic boosters, if they wanted to put it down in the beta club, just make a transfer with no documentation. It's the same thing as like not having any invoices or receipts. So there were 3 transfers that were not supported. Coming on down under the central school, one of the significant deficiencies involved money collections. And this is where the state really tries to focus most of the Red Book on, really. But there were 5 instances where the report of monies collected shows funds were collected they were collected outside the school office, in other words, probably by a teacher or something. And they were collected at least 2 days before the funds were turned into the office. When I say at least 2 days, in some cases, I'll go over here, it could be weeks. So they collect the funds and hold them somewhere, and then later turn it into the office. And clearly, the Red Book, down at the bottom of the page, the Florida Department of Education Red Book, chapter, et cetera, states that insofar as is practical, all money should be collected in the school office. Sometimes that's not practical, But collections made outside of the school office, let's say by a teacher, or even if it's parking or something like that, should be turned into the school office no later than the next business day. So that's one criteria of the Red Book. The second criteria is once it's turned in, it has to be deposited within 5 days. In fact, at one time, y'all had a policy, I think it was the same day, and I presented it. Those of you who've been around a long time, I said, that's difficult to do, particularly if you have a night basketball game or something. But, so, there were 5 instances there where there were issues there. Turning to page 4, the top of the page, another significant deficiency of the central school. Disbursements were not properly supported. Same problem, not proper invoicing and so forth. Well, we found 3 instances where funds were dispersed to an individual that had no receipt or invoice to support that, which is again in violation of the district policy manual. Coming to the middle of the page, Lee Elementary. They had one significant deficiency, and the funds were held by the receiving sponsor, teacher, whatever it may be, which was outside the school office, but there was, let's see, we noted 3 instances where the report of monies collected supporting a deposit was dated several days prior to the pre-numbered receipt of the deposit. So in other words, the money is collected, but they don't actually turn it in for quite some time. In one case, the report of monies collected was dated 2 weeks prior to the deposit. And if you'll flip over to page 8 and 9. So what we have on page 8, the top box, that big rectangular box, shows where it was actually recorded on December 15th for $906. And there's actually a receipt. Well, when you turn that money into the bookkeeper, they're required to give a receipt, and it needs to be signed. So it was dated December 15th, the receipt and also the recording. But if you flip over to the next page, there was actually 3 different report of monies collected where the sponsor or the teacher or whoever writes this up. And you'll see one dated November 29th, December 5th, and then December 8th. And there was also no signatures on this. So, you know, when you have a breakdown in internal controls, it's easy. So let's say if all this doesn't tie out and match, what prevents you from, and there aren't signatures given, what prevents you from, let's say if Ms. Gibson was a teacher that turned in money and I was the bookkeeper, and I just took that receipt and threw it in the trash can, and I took the money and put it in my pocket. That's where the problems can be. So that's why all these receipts need to be pre-numbered, they need to be timely, turned in, you know, and so forth. You just run a risk. And then there was one instance where the funds were not deposited until several months. So, under Greenville, there was some inconsistent and contradictory dates on the receipt forms. Sometimes in the past, we've seen where they'll backdate it and try to, I don't say cover up what they didn't do, but that's what they do. So we noted 3 items where the receipt documentation provided by the school showed inconsistent dates. In one instance, the date recorded on the pre-numbered receipt was 10 days after the funds were deposited into the bank. In each of the 3 items, the date of the deposit recorded in the school's software system was after the date the funds were actually deposited. So it should work just the opposite, you know. Two of the items were recorded as being deposited 6 days after they actually received, actually deposited. So, turning over to page 5, still under Greenville at the top, disbursements. Another significant deficiency where the disbursements were not properly supported by invoice. Same thing. Looking at Pinetta, we had two significant deficiencies. The first one is where pre-numbered receipts were not used, which again is required by the Red Book, state law, and weren't used at all. And I know Pinetta had some issues because there was a pretty big turnover. If I'm not mistaken, there may have been 3 different bookkeepers that year, which when that happens, it makes auditing more difficult. That's why we incurred more hours this year, like over 50 hours more, not just because of Pinetta, but there was a bigger turnover this past year. And it just complicates the audit and we tend to just incur more time. But, so there were not pre-numbered receipts, which are required, that was used. And some of it may be that when you've got that much turnover, you can't really well, you can, but the bookkeepers weren't adequately trained or maybe were not aware. So the second significant deficiency for Pinetta, again, goes back to where I think it was the high school. Transfers between the internal funds were not supported. And again, that's a violation of state law and also your own policy manual. So any disbursements, which includes transfers, have to be supported and documented because these funds are these are fiduciary funds. They're not the school's funds. They belong to that individual organization. And so y'all hold those funds in trust for these various clubs and so forth, and it would be too easy to transfer. That'd be easier than writing checks because you have to have dual signatures on the checks and so forth for that. But the transfers is just a quick little bookkeeping change. That could easily be done. So the transfers really need to be supported by documentation and both parties sign off. So kind of just quick summary. Going to page 6, the 2 biggest areas of concern, and these are recurring from year to year, is that checks and transfers aren't properly supported. And number 2, pre-numbered receipts need to be used. When those aren't consecutively numbered, things can happen. And when things happen, it's difficult to even audit that. So, any questions?
I don't know if this is right, disbursements, that's my biggest concern. That,
Okay.
in other words, you're catching this, that bothers me right there, that this is going on.
And I think in an ideal world, we wouldn't have the turnover we've got.
Yes, that's.
We do in every business, the school has it, and these bookkeeper positions, it just seems like a lot of turnover. So about the time they may get a handle on it and understand a little bit, they're either moved to a different position or they quit and go to a different job.
They don't turn over the documentation or receipt books that they're using.
Uh-huh.
So the next person has to use a different receipt book.
And that pre-numbering is so vital. So,
So that's what we need to make sure that what they're using, they turn everything in.
any other questions? Okay, that wasn't too bad at all.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank y'all. Thank you, and again, thank you for allowing us to continue to audit and so forth. This has been, I don't even know, I was thinking driving up here, has it been 25 years? I don't know, quite some time. So we know this pretty well backwards and forwards. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to accept this audit report?
I move to accept the audit report.
Second.
Have a motion by Ms. Knight, second by Ms. Hagan to accept the audit of internal accounts. Any more discussion? If not, all approve. 5-0. Invoices for cleanup, Mr. Tim.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm bringing 3 items to you for your review, approval, whatever how you want to look at it. The first one's going to be Morgan Tree Service. These services have already been performed during the storm. We had 3 places that we had to have debris removed by a professional. One being down here that took out our fuel pumps and all down here. Then we had a tree split out at the high school that was in danger of falling on the building. So that's what the first three items were, is to Morgan Tree Service. So I don't know if y'all want to approve these by,
All right.
yes,
Let me
ma'am.
ask you a question. Was bids put out for this?
This was done on an emergency basis.
Okay.
So we.
It had to be done, so we-
Yes, and they were actually handled through Synergy,
Okay.
the FEMA people. I don't know if y'all need to approve that or how you want to handle that.
It's been paid, ain't
However,
it?
you-
It has been paid, hasn't it?
Well, this one, part of it has, part
Okay.
of it hasn't.
Okay.
I think probably the best way would be to go ahead and approve all of them, like for Morgan Tree Service at one time.
Okay.
And Mr. Ginn, you're recommending they be approved.
I am. These services, I recommend for us to pay these services, yes.
Okay, that's all for Morgan though, right?
These three, the three invoices, all I've
Okay,
got. from
all right,
Morgan.
all right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the invoices for Morgan Tree Services?
I move to approve the invoices for Morgan Tree and Debris.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Thompson, a second by Ms. Gibson to approve these invoices for Morgan Tree Service. Any discussion? If
It's a
not,
lot of money, but that's all, what can we say?
Yes.
That's,
Well, and it should be reimbursable through FEMA, correct?
I hope it is.
It's an emergency
Yeah.
for the
All
safety.
of that
Yes.
should be
Yes, cool, so-
reimbursable under the emergency order.
All right, any more discussion? If not, all approve, all opposed, 5-0. Tammy? Okay,
Okay, the next two will be Sims Fencing. I contacted two other companies, did not get a response back from them. Sims was willing to give me the quotes. There's two of them, one for the high school and one for Central School. This is for perimeter fencing around our schools, plus the tennis courts fencing that's around there. This does not include the baseball, softball, which y'all approved the RFP earlier last week. So this is just some other odds and ends stuff that needs to be fixed. And I recommend that we accept these quotes from Sim Fence.
Mr. Tim, is this fence that was damaged during the hurricane?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
okay,
What's the name of the company?
Sim Fencing, they're
I
out
move
of
that we
Valdosta.
approve the Sims fencing contracts.
I second.
all right, we have a motion from Ms. Hagan and a second from Ms. Knight to approve the Sims fencing contracts. Any discussion? Any more discussion on it? If not, all approve, all opposed, 5-0.
Now, I think on your paperwork, it's a little box that says Book 2. This, I was asked by the superintendent and the attorney to go through, this is Belfour Restoration Company. This is the company that come in and cleaned up our schools from the water and all the stuff, which is required by our insurance company to do it. I've been through these twice. I went through it with our Synergy people. We went through and cut out anything that was not FEMA reimbursable, which was very little. Most of this stuff is reimbursable through FEMA. But everything here that I've reviewed was received. All these services were received. So, but I'm recommending to pay these for Belfour. And I think Mr. Reeves has some issues with a contract or something else that may come up later on, so.
And to be clear, the number you're recommending is the $156,440 and 15-cent number that's in the.
That is correct.
If you'll recall, and I apologize, if you recall, the Belfour contract was the contract that was on the agenda for the December meeting. And that was the one that they had sent us a contract, and the contract was basically a 1 or a 2-page contract that just said, oh, well, we're signing on to the contract they've already got with another entity. or they didn't give us that contract that we were signing on to. And so we said, well, we can't really do that. So we came to find out the entity, the contract they were talking about was a contract they had with a Texas entity for one of their, it was a Texas entity that was a kind of a purchasing consortium for Texas school districts. And so with that contract, I did not feel that we could piggyback off of that. But we went ahead and had, Balfour has come and they have done work for us, like Mr. Ginn says, and so they are owed some money. And so I think probably my recommendation is that you go ahead and pay them for the work that they've already done. We had to have it done. We had to have it done quickly. And so they are owed for that. But then I don't think we should proceed with them until we get a contract with them and move forward. So that would be my recommendation. And of course, I don't have any insight into what they've done or whether it's good or bad or whatever, and that's why I asked Mr. Ginn, asked the superintendent to ask Mr. Ginn to look through it and give y'all a recommendation as to what's actually going on.
So my question is with there not being a contract in place, is that going to impede our ability to be able to recoup funds from FEMA?
Yeah, I have no idea about that.
So that would be my concern.
That
I know it's
can't
done on
answer
an
without-
emergency
without-
order,
Yeah,
but-
I will find out at 12:30 when I have a call with Synergy
Okay.
and stuff. They had a different figure they submitted for a bill, which I would not sign off on because I could not find a contract to match, which is the reason we were trying to get the contract, so, because it was closer to, I think, 200,000.
Yeah, now I want y'all to understand, this is for Debbie only.
Right.
This is not for Helene.
Right.
Helene is another set of invoices that'll come later.
Right. But I know, in order for us to get reimbursed for that, even though it was done on an emergency order, we have to make sure we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's, or else we're on the hook for that $156,000, which,
Well, there is a signed agreement. It was just the board did not approve that,
okay.
which is the whole concern. So, but I've had him go through and go through and go through to make sure all of that work was completed. So,
Okay, well, regardless, we owe them.
Yeah.
we do.
Okay, do I hear a motion to pay Balfour USA Group $156,440.15 for work they done?
Okay. I move to approve Balfour USA Group, $156,440.15.
Second.
Have a motion by Ms. Gibson and a second by Ms. Knight to accept the Balfour USA, pay the Balfour USA Group $156,440.15. Any more discussion? If not, all approve. 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. Okay, personnel changes, Dr. Pickles.
There's a couple notations I do want to mention on our transfer with Miss Christie. While we do have an effective date of February 3rd, I have been asked to hold off on that until they can, she's part-time high school, part-time central school, but they're waiting to fill the position at the high school. So once they can fill that position at the high school, then she will move fully to central school. So now the attachments you were given go down to the employee resigned, termination, leave of absence. Miss Trissa, our para, is requesting a leave of absence for her internship. She is actually completing her elementary degree, and she has her internship. So she actually had told me that she was trying to work out her days. She can continue to work with us part-time, but she had to work out her days. So that's what she has provided. So her days highlighted in yellow are the days that she would need off for her internship. So she is actually asking to work part-time, the days be off those days to complete her internship hours. So those are the two changes. So as far as the personnel recommendations, but I do recommend everything else. Are there any other questions?
Where's she interning?
I don't know the school, she can't intern with us.
Dang.
Capacity, is she serving here at the school?
She's a para.
And then with who, with whom?
Oh, at Central.
I'm saying, what class or what, or whoever?
I think
Oh,
pre-K.
she's
I can't hear.
that she floats, she's a floater.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that will be reassigned. That has not been discussed. We have to, I think it's pending whether we will allow her to do this.
Well, then I can understand if she's a floater, that means that we don't have to draw somebody else from another one and put them in that position. You can always draw from other people, use several people to cover her, instead of just one person if she's just, oh, I'm with fifth grade, this particular
And
subject.
if we
But
can
she's a
continue
floater.
to utilize her, that's definitely
easier.
a benefit.
It's easier.
So, Mr. Chairman, so are we changing the recommendation? Is it not leave of absence, it's go to part-time, or what's the?
Well, she has to fill out the leave of absence. So it's a leave of absence, I guess, on designated days, or move to shift to part-time.
So that's exactly how we're gonna classify her.
Okay, part-time. We can move her to
Remove the
part-time
leave of absence.
And pay her for her hours based on the schedule?
based on,
Okay.
And then for Ms. Roebuck, both her resignation and her transfer would be, the date would be effective the date of the new hire? Is that what you're?
correct. Yeah. Her permanent site will become Central.
So we're just.
Regardless.
Her date.
Her date is the only thing it's a matter of when her permanent shift will become Central.
Okay. All right. Got the personnel changes. Do I hear a motion for the accept of personnel changes?
I move to accept the personnel changes with the change of moving Ms. Provo to part-time instead of leave of absence, and then with the change of having Ms. Roebuck's effective date changed to the date of a new hire for her position.
Okay, we have a motion. There's a second. Have a motion by Ms. Thompson, a second by Ms. Hagan to accept the personnel changes with the changes in the time and the date of the effective date. Do I, any more discussion on personnel change? If not, all approve? All opposed? 5-0. All right. Volunteers?
None at this time.
None at this time.
They should be on the next meeting.
Okay.
We should have some.
Expenditure report?
You do have the expenditure report uploaded. If you have any questions, please let me know. Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure I can answer your question for you, but go ahead.
Okay, I've got a question. I can't pinpoint it right now, but it was for $8,400 to Annette Bus Lines. I wondered about that.
That's the split for the athletics. I can't answer that one for you. That's our split that we do with the
Oh,
athletics.
For 1 month, is that?
No, for the total.
For the total? Okay.
Do we need
Are there any
to-
other questions?
I would like to accept.
Accepted. Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. Do we have a motion to accept the expenditure report?
I move to approve this expenditure report.
Second.
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Gibson and a second by Ms. Hagan to accept the expenditure report. Any more discussion? If not, all approve. 5-0, Mr. Timmons. Staff travel, Dr. Pierce.
You have quite a few staff travel there listed for you. You have a couple of them I did email you about because they were kind of taking place the end of the week. And the staff did attend. I know the one that was coming from IDEA. So then there's a special certification on there for some of mine. I have all my FADS training, and we are making the amendment to Title II. The one exception is mine for Gainesville this week has been canceled, so we will be taking that one off. But since they're all on there. So my FADS training should be coming out of our Title II grant. So I do ask for approval of all our staff trips.
Okay, have a motion to accept the staff travel.
I move to accept the staff travel.
Second,
My second.
have a motion by Ms. Thompson, a second by Ms. Knight to accept the staff travel. Any discussion? All approve? 5-0, Ms. Timmy. All right, public hearing. Ms. Hoffman. Hoffman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Coming back to this, it's been a little bit, but we didn't get things advertised in enough time to get to the December meeting, and then we've only had the one meeting in January. So I'm bringing the student progression plan back to you. We had just a little piece of it that we needed to relook at and to figure some things out. And so I actually just brought you a copy of the page that was in question. You're welcome. And it was, the question was.
Thank you, ma'am.
As far as the first and second, I'm sorry, not that. The first and second grade report card grades, being whether they were a SN or U listed on the report cards, or to have it as a letter grade A, B, C, or D, or F. So we are leaving it as the A, B, C, D, F for this school year. It will stay that way. And I've already added into the pupil progression plan a statement for next year that the first and second grade will go to the SN and U for next year. So we'll already have that in place as we move forward and I readjust the plan for next year. So at this time, I guess, open for public hearing.
Okay, we go, all right, we are open the public hearing for the student progression plan at this time.
Fresh out of public.
All right, now, the public hearing is now closed because there's no one here. And,
So I guess therefore now I'm asking for you to approve the student progression plan for the 24-25 school year.
I move to approve the student progression plan.
I second.
have a motion to approve the student progression plan by Ms. Thompson, second by Ms. Knight. Any more discussion on it? Not all approve? 5-0.
Thank you. Dr. Pickles, is it okay if I go ahead and give them the Celebrate Literacy Week stuff for next week?
Yes, you
Okay.
can go ahead and do that.
So we had originally planned for the principals to come this evening and present what they're doing next week for the Celebrate Literacy Week for the state of Florida. And since this was during the school day with the principal being at their school, I'm just presenting these documents to you just to let you know what activities are planned next week for each one of the schools. And the separate sheet is also for Madison Creative Arts Academy because they had supplied me with their schedule also.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so look at the schedule, see what's available, and if you're available to visit any of the schools during that time. I do notice as well that some people have been asked to be guest readers here and there. And so if you aren't on that list, but you would like to be a guest reader at one of the schools, please reach out to one of the schools, and I'm sure they could probably make a spot for you. I know some of them may have somebody doing 2 classrooms or something, so they would love to have you at their school as a guest reader. The theme for this year is Building Literacy, Constructing the Foundation for Success. So several of the activities are based around that theme. But like I said, they enjoy this time of year and just doing all kind of things fun with reading. So we want to do everything we possibly can do to encourage reading in the school, in the homes. And as you can see from the FAST data, we have several students that could use a little boost in their reading abilities. So everything we can do is a plus for us. Any questions on that?
Thank you for sharing it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Permission to advertise 1,000 and 2,000 policy revisions. Dr. Pickle?
So we have quite a few policies from Neola that we need to review and advertise, and this is, instead of giving you all of them at one time, this is just the 1 and 2,000s. So these are Neola suggestions, so I do ask that we go ahead and advertise these. If you do want to workshop them, it's whatever the pleasure of the board.
These are the Neolas.
The Neolas. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
So I do ask that we can go ahead and advertise these.
Do we have a permission to, motion to permission to advertise 1,000 and 2,000 policy?
I move to grant permission to advertise 1,000 and 2,000 policy revisions.
I second.
I have a motion by Ms. Gibson and a second by Ms. Knight to approve the permission to advertise 1,000 and 2,000 policy revisions. Is there any discussion? If not, all approved. 5-0. All right. We're down to the superintendent items.
As you're all aware, we are dealing with a winter storm and cold and everything. So after executive orders were sent out last night, we had to change into early release today and actually have very few students in school today. Parents elected to keep their kids home today. We will be closed tomorrow. And so we will be closing early today. I encourage you to stay off the roads today. It's already started snowing or icy out in West Florida. After the briefing this morning, it is very concerning. They're still calling for the black ice Thursday morning. So we're going to err on the side of caution and close on Thursday. It's not ideal, but it only takes that one little accident, either with our bus or one of our students or staff driving, and then we're gonna have issues. So, not ideal, but I can't try to predict a delayed start, but they are calling for the refreezing through the night. So, stay warm. So
we will be closing.
we will be closed
Early
Thursday.
today.
Early today, closed all day
Wednesday
Wednesday,
and
and
Thursday.
closed Thursday. Yes, ma'am.
Return Friday unless.
Unless we have a whole lot of freezing and power outages, then we'll figure out something different. So, I did want to report back from the state board meeting. We were actually supposed to have a walkthrough with our BSI rep and kind of come talk about Central School. So we can expect, they did accept our top plan that was presented. With some possible addition of conditions. So there are a lot of concerns because of the hurricane damage and we've been impacted the last 15 months. So the state board is very much concerned because this area has been hit, and they are also very supportive. So we were supposed to do a walkthrough Thursday morning. I'm waiting to see if we can reschedule that. So we're going to try to get that rescheduled as quick as possible. And then they may go ahead and give us additional conditions because we do want to make sure we have all the support for Central and also then continue our support with Greenbelt Elementary. So we will see what additional supports are provided for us. So right this moment, we've talked about our weatherization, making sure that Tim is putting things in place, checking all the schools. They were out doing that this morning. And so hopefully we will not have any freezing. We have enough gas at the schools to continue with that. So biggest thing right now is we're watching this weather. So that's all I have at this moment.
Okay. Mr. Attorney,
No, sir, nothing for me.
nothing for you? Sure? All right. All right, Ms. Haight.
Nothing for me, thank you.
I'd like to recognize one of our students at Madison County High School, Layla Peavy, who participated in the FMEA High School Honor Band, which is an honor in itself. I'd like to thank Mr. Artiga for his encouragement and instruction that he provides. I'd also like to recognize the Beta Club with their much success at state convention. Thank you to Ms. Griffin for her sponsorship and for all the work she puts into it. Samuel Agner did a great job tonight. I had the pleasure of teaching his father, Willie Agner, a few years ago. Very good family. I'm proud of him. That's it for now.
Okay, Ms. Knight?
No, I just echo what Ms. Gibson stated. We're making some huge gains and some progress with our schools, and a lot of great things are happening. So I just want everybody to stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next week.
Enjoy the snowflakes.
Yes. I would also like to say thank you
Big problem.
to Samuel Agner for coming and saying our prayer today. It's very special to have one of our homeschool students come and showcase some of his abilities. And thank you, Ms. Knight, for presenting and talking about Samuel and some of the things that he enjoys. I'd also like to say stay safe, and hopefully we'll get snow and not ice, but it's not really looking that way. But maybe we can make some snow angels and some snowballs and have some fun over the next couple days. Whoever would have thought Florida kids would be getting snow days, but here we are. So just everybody stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay, I just thank everybody. I thank all our staff and our students and our parents. I hope everybody stays safe. And I got a snow plow if anybody needs it.
How much you charging for that?
I'll donate it, my snow plow.
So do you want to build a snowman?
Anything else?
Motion
Do I
to
have a-
adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Everybody ready for that? Motion to. We are
Thank
adjourned.
you.